These are cases too disturbing for Netflix to touch. Top 10 cold cases with shocking twists. Case number 2. The murder of Arlis Perry, 1974. The Stanford Chapel killing, and the guard no one looked at. Late on an October night in 1974, Stanford's Memorial Church sat in near-perfect silence. The heavy wooden doors were locked. The stained glass windows glowed faintly in the moonlight. Inside, the stillness should have been absolute. But by morning, that quiet sanctuary would become one of the most unsettling crime scenes in California history. When staff opened the chapel, they found 19-year-old Arlis Perry murdered near the altar. She had entered the building after an argument with her husband, looking for a few minutes of prayer. Instead, she was confronted and attacked. Her body was arranged in a disturbing, ritual-like manner, turning a sacred space into the backdrop of a nightmare. The brutality and staging left investigators shaken. It was the kind of scene that offered horror, but no clear direction. For the first few weeks, suspicion scattered in every direction. Arlis was newly married, deeply religious, and still adjusting to life far from her North Dakota home. Detectives wondered whether she had crossed paths with someone disturbed or predatory on campus. In the mid-1970s, talk of secret cults and hidden rituals was spreading across the country, and the positioning of her body fueled those theories. Rumors took on a life of their own. Students whispered that the chapel was cursed. Writers later tied the case into the wave of satanic panic that swept through the decade. But rumor is not evidence, and the evidence refused to speak. Year after year, investigators returned to the file. They pursued drifters, troubled students, and self-proclaimed mystics. Every new lead burned out. The case drifted from active investigation into legend, an unsolved campus tragedy, kept alive by speculation and late-night retellings. The one constant was the same detail from the earliest reports. Arlis had entered the church shortly before closing, and the security guard on duty had locked the doors not long after. But without the right tools, suspicion could not become proof. The case stayed cold. Decades later, forensic science finally caught up with the evidence. Old materials from the crime scene were re-examined using modern DNA methods that did not exist in the 1970s. With these new tests, investigators shifted their attention from the far-fetched theories that had clouded the case for so long and returned to the small group of people who had legitimate access to the chapel that night. One name rose to the surface, a name investigators had written in the file 40 years earlier: Stephen Crawford, the campus security guard who had found Arlis's body, the man who had locked the chapel after she entered, the man who had cooperated, answered questions, and then quietly maintained his life on and around campus. He had been there from the beginning, but in the absence of DNA, he had never been meaningfully scrutinized. When modern testing revealed that biological material linked to the crime matched Crawford, the case shifted in an instant. Detectives prepared to confront him in 2018, hoping to finally close one of Stanford's darkest mysteries. But when they arrived at his home with a search warrant, Crawford retreated into a back room and ended his own life before they could bring him in. It was not a confession, but it was not the reaction of a man falsely accused. Afterward, investigators publicly stated that the DNA evidence and totality of circumstances placed Crawford at the center of the crime. The guard who had once presented himself as a responsible figure securing the chapel had been, all along, the person the evidence had been waiting for, hidden in plain sight. Arlis Perry's case is a reminder that danger does not always come from the shadows. Sometimes it stands by the door, wears a uniform, and answers questions with practiced calm. And in the next story, the man responsible did not stand watch over a chapel. He lived quietly among the very people he had terrified.